Protesters have gathered near Golden Square in Hong Kong, where a ceremony marking the former British colony's return to China will take place. Activists attempted to disrupt the annual flag-raising ceremony by setting up roadblocks in the area. Police erected tall barriers and shut off access to Golden Square to prevent protesters from massing there overnight. Anniversary draws protests nearly every year. This year is expected to be larger than usual because of widespread opposition to the government's controversial extradition bill. Hong Kong witnessed a pro-police protest on Sunday. Thousands of people carrying white and blue leaflets with slogans in favor of police-backed downtown park in the city. Slogans were raised and speeches were made in favor of the police. The protest came in the wake of criticism of Hong Kong's police alleged mishandling of an anti-extradition protest on July 12th. Police have received flack for the violent turn of events in the anti-extradition bill protest. Interestingly, the pro-police protests have happened a day before the anniversary of Hong Kong's handover to China. Hundreds in Hong Kong paid a tribute to a 21-year-old student who had jumped to her death in protest to the extradition bill. People gathered at the city's education university to mourn the death. A minute's silence was also held for the student. The 21-year-old had left a final message before giving up her life. People had laid flowers and, in fact, bowed in front of the banner carrying the final message on it. The banner read, "I wish to exchange my life to fulfill the wishes of 2 million. Please keep persisting." Seven Sudanese protesters have been killed as tens of thousands have marched in the capital Khartoum demanding a return to civilian rule. Sudan's Transitional Military Council claims that unknown snipers shot at civilians and soldiers. The protesters called for a transition to civilian rule after the oust of President Omar al-Bashir. The demonstrations became amid a week-long standoff between the ruling military council and protest leaders. Sudan has been in political unrest for over a month now since the army ouster of the president. Japan resumes commercial whaling after 30 years. Japan left the International Whaling Commission in 2018 and will send out its first whaling ships today. The move comes amid huge opposition from environmentalists across the world. Whale meat is a part of Japanese cuisine, but recently whale meat consumption has fallen in Japan. Counting is underway in Albania's controversial municipal elections. Thousands of police officers were deployed to guard polling stations and supervise the transportation of ballots to official counting centers. While the socialist-run government, which is tipped to win overwhelmingly, insisted on holding the election, the opposition, led by the centre-right Democratic Party, wanted to stop it from taking place. Huge crowds joined a funeral procession in Iran's capital on Thursday. This was to bury the remains of 150 people who died during the 1980s Iran-Iraq war. As per local media, the bodies of the blessed martyrs were to be buried in provinces across Iran. Of the 150 people to be buried, 115 were unknown soldiers and another 35 were identified by DNA test. People marched in Tehran alongside a vehicle carrying coffins draped in Iranian flags, chanting "Death to America." Some others showed anger over recent U.S. sanctions against Iran. At least 10 people are feared dead in Addison after a plane crashed into a hangar at the airport. The incident took place when the twin-engine Beechcraft was taking off. Reports say the plane then caught fire, killing all on board. No one was inside the hangar at the time of the incident. An investigation in the matter is underway. 3 suspects in the case of the shooting of former Boston Red Sox star David ORTIZ, including the individual police, say that the responsible for planning the attack was sentenced to a year in prison by a judge in Santo Domingo on Sunday. ORTIZ was shot at while seated at a club in what later turned out to be a case of mistaken identity. ORTIZ has been recovering at the hospital in Boston since the attack. U.S. presidential hopeful Beto O'Rourke has visited a migrant shelter at the U.S.-Mexico border. He talked to the migrants outside the shelter in Spanish and said that Mexican migrants should not have to wait in Mexico while applying for asylum in the U.S. The visit comes amid U.S.-Mexico tensions regarding illegal migration. Mexico has promised the U.S. to tighten the porous border. Illegal migration from Mexico has become a talking point for the presidential hopefuls in the 2020 presidential elections. Mexico has officially launched a new National Guard. The new force will not only combat violence and crime in the country, but also help with border security. As per the new agreement with the U.S., Mexico is supposed to curb illegal migration into the U.S., even as it officially became operational on Sunday. The National Guard has already been deployed to curb illegal immigration. This is the latest effort by Mexican authorities to beef up security at the Mexico-U.S. border to prevent illegal migration.
De reprimir a nuestro pueblo.
Thousands of supporters of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro took to the streets to defend the government and its justice minister. Brazil's justice minister has faced accusations of how he acted improperly while overseeing corruption allegations as a judge. Demonstrators carried banners in Moro We Trust and wore Brazilian flags. Demonstrators also called for a military intervention to put an end to the corruption in the country. Venezuelan authorities have confirmed the death of a military officer who was earlier in custody. The officer was allegedly involved in a coup attempt against President Nicolas Maduro. The death of Navy Captain Rafael Acosta came on the heels of a visit by the United Nations Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet to investigate rights violation ranging from extrajudicial killings to forced disappearances as well. European leaders met on Sunday to decide who will lead the major supranational bloc. Right now, reports suggest that Frans Timmermans, a Dutch socialist, is the most popular candidate to become the next chief executive. Due to differences in the opinion, the council leaders could not decide on a new president for the European Central Bank. The post of EU Council President and the EU's foreign policy chief are also to be filled. European Union and Vietnam have reached a landmark free trade deal. This is the first such deal between Brussels and a developing nation. The deal would lead to tariff reduction on 90% of the goods. The EU has called it one of the most ambitious free trade deals. Eurozone is Vietnam's second largest export market after the United States, with main supplies comprising garment and footwear products. However, the deal that is yet to be ratified faces several roadblocks. India's Customs Department has made its biggest ever overhaul of heroin and narcotics. The Customs Department seized 532 kgs of suspected heroin from the Attari-Wagah border post with Pakistan. The consignment was worth 2,700 rupees. The packages had been hidden under hundreds of salt bags in the trucks. Heroin and another 52-kilogram package of suspected mixed narcotics were being smuggled through the Attari border trade route. Police armed with tear gas stormed restaurants and bars in Istanbul on Sunday. This was to disperse activists gathered for the Gay Pride parade. It was organized despite the city's governor having banned the march. In a statement, the volunteer group which organized the parade said that the governor's office banned the march in central Taksim's district as well as square designated for demonstrators west of the city. Amnesty International called on Turkey this week to lift the arbitrary ban. Up to 100,000 people had gathered for a pride march in Istanbul in 2014. The police have blocked such marches since activists have vowed to continue voicing their demands. Marking the Pride Month, people took to the streets of Bogota to celebrate the city's annual Pride March. People marched holding signs and banners with messages of equality and love. The rainbow flag was prominent throughout the march. Pride marches have taken place in various parts of the world to mark the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. The world's top international trail runners completed the 16th Olympus marathon on Saturday. The iconic 44-kilometer Greek race with 3,200 ascents. Spain's Zaid Eid Malik won the men's race with a time of 4 hours, 31 minutes and 47 seconds. The women's race, Elisa Diesco of Italy took the honours. South Americans are all set to witness a total solar eclipse on July the 2nd. Interestingly, this eclipse can be streamed online from anywhere in the world. The last time South Africa saw a total eclipse was in 2017, the year when the eclipse magic pervaded after a long time in America. This year, San Francisco's museum will host a live stream of the eclipse view from observatory in Chile. The broadcast will be available across all Android and iOS platforms through an app specifically designed for the solar eclipse. Sun worshippers in Germany enjoyed soaking up the rays, bathing by the lakeside as a record-breakingly hot June came to an end. Young and old alike splashed water and formed long queues in front of the ice cream truck. June this year received 300 hours of sunshine, the sunniest since 1951. As for temperatures, the mercury broke the previous high of 2003. However, temperatures are expected to drop over the next 2 to 3 days. European Union is fleeing the pressure of the Act on Climate Change. Hundreds of protesters gathered in front of the EU headquarters in Brussels and called on the EU leaders to act on climate change. Protesters were seen holding placards and banners to draw attention to the issue. The EU Council leaders are presently in Brussels. Through the agenda of the meeting is not climate change. At a summit on June 20th, EU failed to set a deadline for going carbon-free due to opposition from Poland, Czech Republic and Hungary. Russia's Irkutsk region still continues to suffer from heavy floods. A state of emergency has been called in the region. The floods have affected thousands of residential buildings and killed 5 people already. Over 350 people have also been injured. The heavy rainfall has caused lakes and rivers of the region to burst their banks. Russian President Vladimir Putin visited the flood-affected region after he returned from the G20 summit. Spain's wildfires forced the evacuation of residents on the Sunday in the place called Cardal de los Vidrios, as the flames coming from a previous wildfire in Toledo crossed into the Madrid region. Madrid Emergency Services said that around 75 people were forced to evacuate their homes during the time as flames approached the La Castellana residential area. They were relocated in a local sports complex early on Sunday. The military emergency unit arrived in the area to reinforce the firefighters.